All right, thank you for your patience. Calling to order this board forum at 5:37 PM. Oh, no worries at all. Welcome. Thanks all for being here. And we're going to start out with a little presentation, then I'll give some comment, and then we're here to do what we're here to do tonight, which is to hear from all of you. So Joe, if you'd like to introduce yourself and your team and take it away.
Hi, Joe Strake, Board Liaison with City Schools. To my left is Chief of School Police, Akil Ham. To my right is Ed Clark with the Maryland Center for School Safety. So tonight, first and foremost, I just want to say that the timing of this forum was in no way done to politicize the tragedy at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, and that the timing, we rescheduled a forum from January 17th, and we're moving forward today because it seems like there's no good time to do this. So with that being said, we're moving forward, and I'm going to quote our CEO, Dr. Santelises, to start the meeting because I think it's a great way to frame the excellent work that our school police do every day. Schools must be places where students and staff know they are safe, where parents and caregivers send their children every morning with confidence that they will return whole and well every afternoon. Our commitment to our students means doing everything in our power to keep violence outside of our school doors. Our commitment to our society must also include working together to stop these events from occurring. And that was from Dr. Santelises as a result of what the awful events that happened in Florida. And our officers play an instrumental role in providing a safe environment for our students. As a matter of fact, there have been 3 occasions this year where handguns have been recovered without incident from city schools, in part due to the relationships that our school police have cultivated with our students, who they were able to recover without any harm whatsoever. So, with all of that being said, on-board docs are our proposed policy, our proposed regulation, and our proposed revisions to the general orders. We were charged with creating a policy to match the vision of Dr. Santelises and Chief Ham. So we created this umbrella policy for which all of our general orders are through that lens, right? And so that's kind of our guidance and philosophical document, whereas the general orders are informed by those guidance documents, and those are kind of the day-to-day procedural happenings of our school police. We want people to see our school police not as over-policing, not as disciplinarians, and not as people who contribute to the school-to-prison pipeline, but we want them to be viewed as mentors, relationship builders, and protectors of our youth. And that is kind of the mission and vision of everything that we've done throughout this process. So the general orders process was painstaking. Ed Clark and I went through every single line of every single general order. We did a tremendous amount of research from best practices nationally and locally, from as far away as Oakland to as close as Baltimore County, Frederick, Palm Beach, Atlanta, Georgia, Detroit, Clayton County. I mean, we went through hundreds and thousands of pages of documents to really try and bring us up to a level that we want to be at the forefront of school policing throughout the country, under constitutional and community policing, which are defined in our policy. And the goal is to get up to this CALEA standard, which is a golden benchmark, and CALEA stands for the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies. So we looked at a lot of school police and regular police policies that are benchmarked to this CALEA standard. And also, we were fortunate enough through the connections with Mr. Clark to have guidance by Judge Stephen Teskey of Clayton County, who is a national expert in the school-to-prison pipeline and restorative justice. So he's done a really good job, and we're hoping to go out and visit him between now and when this goes to policy or when it goes to first reader to get even more in-depth perspective from Mr. Teskey. So we were fortunate enough to be partnered up with Mr. Clark free of charge at the suggestion of Senator Bill Ferguson, who was tipped off by one of our community advocates. So he's done a tremendous amount of work pro bono to help us out. So I want to thank him publicly for all of this. Next up, and is a huge and very important part of this, which is why we're all here, which is the third bullet there. This is the board forum. Community engagement is a tremendous part of this. And all of the experts that we talk to, it's not a very common occurrence to have general orders done in this public way, but we felt that it was really important to be as transparent as possible and to engage as many stakeholders as possible. So with all that being said, in around October, I met with Sabrina Sutton, who's in our community engagement department, and Nicole Price in our community engagement of 21st century schools. They gave me a tremendous list of advocates, neighborhood associations, nonprofit, community groups. I emailed every single person. I sent them an email that basically walked through this process. The dates have changed. Initially, we were supposed to bring it to policy committee today, but our forum is today, so everything got bumped back a month. But everyone who responded, I've been in contact with. I've tried not to annoy all these people because I've blasted out like hundreds of emails. But the purpose of tonight is to really get everything out there in a very public way, a full month before we bring it formally to you, to policy committee, because as of right now, everything is still, it's an official forum, if you will, but this isn't part of the reader process. So this is just to put out there for input from our officers, our community, and board members. For those of you that haven't seen it, they were posted in full on February 14th. Which I know it was a lot of documents for only 1 week of reading, but we really tried to get everything out not in piecemeal, but in one chunk so that, everyone could print it out and enjoy a nice leisurely read. The process continues. Today I had phone calls with representatives from Disability Rights Maryland, with the NAACP. We just had a meeting with Youth as Resources the other day. We met with Sergeant Boatwright of the FOP. So, we're taking every comment seriously, and every comment that we receive, we will reply whether it is or is not accepted and why. All of that will be publicly posted on board docs for everyone to see our rationale. So next slide is our scheduled timeline of events. We are here living the February 20th board forum as it stands. 1 month from today, in this exact location, we will be bringing it to policy committee for the first time. The first reader at the public board meeting will be on Tuesday, May 8th, and the second reader will be on Tuesday, June 12th. As you can see, there's a long time between February 20th and June 12th, and that was done by design to allow for as much engagement as possible. I prefer in-person meetings, as I've told every advocate, but I'm open to email, conference calls, Skype, whatever. I'll talk to anyone who wants to talk about this. And between now and June, I anticipate a lot of those meetings. So that is the timeline. This is a breakdown of what the school police policy looks like. So as I said, it's kind of an umbrella policy that will inform all of the work. So it's broken into these sections of policy standards, implementation strategies, and compliance. A huge part of that is the compliance report, where we will yearly report out on school policing, which is something we currently do. As a matter of fact, it will be at Operations Committee the third week in March. Is our annual school police report. In addition, Youth as Resources and Baltimore Algebra Project have last year added for the first time a school police report card, and we're going to continue that as it is laid out in the policy, a student-led, student-supervised and administered survey. The regulation is kind of the backbone of the policy, if you will, so the general orders are an extension of the regulation. Something that I really want to spell out that is in the general order section of the regulation is that our general orders are going to be reviewed biannually by Ed. No, I don't know. So that's a huge step from the from the last time, which a lot of our general orders haven't been updated since 2013, which is 5 years. A lot of state law, local law, federal law changes in that time. So it's going to be in our regulation to review it biannually. And with that said, that means that the engagement will never stop. This isn't something that is going to end June 12th and then the door is going to be shut. Our phone lines, our email addresses will be open for feedback. If there's anything that pops up where someone suggests, oh, there's no general order on this, whether it's an officer or an advocate, we could always revisit that. So this is something that is going to be ongoing revision process and an open dialogue with the community. And it's not just a February 20th to June 12th situation. This is, ongoing for the foreseeable future. Speaking of general orders, we added 4 from creation, and these are a pretty good idea of things that we feel are important. So one is, just as it says, is on community relations. We're all about community policing and developing relationships between our school communities and our officers. Diversion strategies, as I said, we don't want to, the school to prison pipeline is something that we're vehemently opposed to. So the diversion strategies general order really speaks to that, in that it talks about how we can prevent people from getting criminal records and putting them on the right path. The next one is the LGBTQ general order, which just adds additional protections and provisions on how officers should address people of that community. And lastly, the marijuana civil citation. Once again, we're not trying to criminalize things, so this is very much in line with the general order for Baltimore City Police, guidelines on how to deal with the recovering of marijuana. And removed civilian performance evaluation. We're working with Human Capital to have a new evaluation tool, so this one was kind of outdated. Physical fitness has been removed. And then when I saw this morning, I was like, I kind of wish I worded this differently, because it says remove freedom of speech, which, that sounds terrible, right? Like, that's against everything that I've been talking about. But the reason that it was removed was because it was merged. We had another general order that specifically talked about trespassing and picketing. So in that, we have protections for First Amendment rights. And this is something that I'm definitely open to recreating a general order on freedom of speech protections. But this one specifically really just talked about, I think from 1963, a ruling about rioting. So it really didn't seem like it added anything to what we had added into the trespassing and picketing general order. These are general orders, and this slide was specifically created to kind of highlight the ones that we made significant revisions on and not minor detailing. A lot of the work that we did was making sure language was consistent and clear, but these were ones where we added a lot. So bias-based profiling, child abuse investigations, domestic violence, equal opportunity employment, organizational structure, reporting of bias incidents, and use of force. And when I say that we went through every general order, I mean every time a phone number appeared in these hundreds of pages of documents, either I or Ed personally called it to make sure it was still accurate. So these are just small things that we really went through every single piece to make sure that everything was updated. This slide is general orders that we're still in the process of revising. In-service training is one. The other one is rapid response. So we felt that it was very important. So it's currently in an annex of a general order. We're moving it into a full-fledged general order. And that will cover active shooting, which is unfortunately very relevant to the times that we're in, which is why we're spending extra careful time on that one. So as it stands now, we're really researching best practices. We're, talking with our legal team about case law and really seeing how we can have the best possible general order involving rapid response. And I personally will be undergoing ALICE training, which stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate training in April, which is in response to all this to give myself a little more expertise. I'm no Ed, but, I'm getting there.
Doing a good job.
So after I attend this training, we might see an addition to where we might recommend this training to principals, teachers, because, it's important in today's climate to make sure everyone is prepared. And I'm going to turn it over to the chief at this point to speak a little bit more to what we're currently doing as far as active shooter situations and rapid response, just for the public's benefit.
Good evening, commissioners and cabinet. Currently, our officers undergo advanced law enforcement rapid response training. We call it ALERT. All of our officers have been trained by certified ALERT instructors on active shooter response. However, what Joe alluded to is ALIS training, which most of the country is going to as kind of best practices. This is something that we've been doing and undergoing probably for the last 3 or 4 years. We actively train with the Baltimore Police Department SWAT team. We've done training in a lot of our vacant school buildings, Northeast Middle, Patapsco. The SWAT team is actually co-trained with us, and we've co-trained with the district for a dual response in case we encounter an active shooter in the school building. So it's something that we've already been doing, but we want to do best practices. So I'm also attending with Joe. Me and Ed spoke last week, and we're going to try to see if we can get some officers and administrators to attend in April when they have the training.
Thank you. Another thing that I wanted to specifically talk about is state law, which we cannot supersede here with our revised general orders. And Education Article 4.318, it states, that our officers that are permanently assigned to buildings cannot be armed. So there's nothing that we could do in the general orders to either one way or another change that. So I just wanted to be very transparent and upfront about that. That is not something that is in the policy or general orders. And as it says there, state law supersedes school policy and general orders. So I just want that to be clear. The policy was done in conjunction with the student chief of schools office, Amanda Ellison, who is unfortunately not able to be here tonight. And then that's my email address. Hopefully everyone already has it. If you don't, there it is. Email me whenever you want, and I will assuredly get back to you. And I don't normally go to the appendix, but I'm going to go up there on board docs. All of our current general orders are there. So if there's something that you want to see, granted, a lot of the general orders, there's a lot of red line strikeouts, so it might be helpful to see what they originally looked like and what they look like now. And if you go to these links, you have the opportunity to do both of those things. So that concludes my remarks. Ed, do you have anything that you would like to add?
Just a couple things, Joe. Good evening, commissioners and everyone here. On behalf of Dr. Karen Salmon, our State Board of Education Superintendent, and our Governing Board Chair, I'm Ed Clark. I'm the Executive of the Maryland Center for School Safety. And we kiddingly said we did this pro bono, but this was an official request from the CEO here to the Governing Board to provide support and assistance to Baltimore City Public Schools. And we do that to any public school district and private school district. That is part of our mission to provide technical assistance and support. And I just want to reaffirm what Joe had said, that we spent a lot of time. And I feel very good about where the Baltimore City School Police are currently right now in being a national leader in terms of cutting-edge general orders, cutting-edge policies and procedures to certainly reflect community policing, constitutional policing, and the rights of our citizens here in the state of Maryland and within Baltimore City. So when you get said and done with this process, you will have a very robust and very up-to-date set of general orders, more so than the vast majority of current law enforcement agencies and school police departments. And I think that is something that you all can be very proud of with the additional input from your community advocates. Those comments will only make additions. So again, as Joe said, the general orders really kind of dictate from the corporate philosophy of the school board and of the superintendent and of the community. And the general orders are sort of like the nuts and bolts, day-to-day operational aspects. But we feel very good about what we brought forward in those documents, and we're always open for additional comments and for changes. But this is a work in progress. So thank you for the opportunity to help support your important mission here.
Absolutely, and thank you. When Mr. Clark mentions, that he was requested to come in and support us, remembering that this was an entire administration ago. So this has been a long process. But anyone that knows anything that's worth doing is worth doing well, and the more diversity of thought we get in the process, the better the product will be. Before you step away from the table, just a point of process for the public. This is a board forum, and the purpose of a board forum is simply for us to hear from you, to get the public's input one final last time before it comes to the policy committee. So I've asked my colleagues not to comment, to just simply listen and be good recorders of your information, your story. But prior to you stepping away, I would invite, if anyone has any questions for Mr. Clark or Joe. Yep, go ahead, Allison.
Sorry, board members should definitely ask questions, but before we do that, I also want to just take a minute to express my appreciation to Joe Strake, who took this over, as you indicated.
getting there.
I am so overwhelmed with gratitude over this. I mean, this has been, as you said, pending for a long time before Dr. Santelises and I started. This was in the works. We came in when there was a policy that had been developed with a lot of input from outside members, which was really helpful, but it didn't take into consideration the general orders. So we were kind of presented with this challenge where we had hundreds of pages of general orders, which are policy. With this new policy, it considered some of them, but not others, and so how those two interacted was not clear. We knew we had a massive undertaking to figure out how to reconcile the input and all the thought and good work that we had from the community, but reflected in what we were doing with the general orders. And so we were a little daunted by the undertaking, but Joe has taken it on full speed, and the number of documents that he has consulted, the number of jurisdictions that he's reached out to, the number of community members that he's reached out to, the expertise that he's developed on President Obama's 21st century policing plan. I mean, it's been incredible what he's done, and that we're in this place where we can go over the entire breadth of the policy and the general orders is just a huge testament to his work. He's been open to feedback from any members, and we'll have a lot more feedback from community members, but he's been reaching out to anybody who has expertise in this area to get feedback. And so I just couldn't say enough about how impressed I am and how appreciative I am for the work that he's done on this. And then also, I think that this policy now reflects the kind of approach that Chief Ham has been taking in his leadership role in the school police, where he's really changed the relationship of his officers with our students, and really developed really positive relationships with our students, and the kind of trainings that he's exposed his officers to, from restorative practices to mediation, really kind of changing his approach to the way his officers approach their work, and that has been palpable, and we've definitely heard feedback from students about that, and we've seen it ourselves. So I think now we've got orders that actually reflect what you've been trying to do, so I think that's great. And then lastly, Ed Clark, when Ed says that he spent a little time here, I think Ed actually has a cot upstairs. I'm not sure where it is, but he's been here 24 hours a day helping us with this, and we really were struggling trying to find who has expertise until Senator Ferguson identified that your office was ready to do this. When Joe first told me that you were willing to do this and that you did this for free, I was sure that he had it wrong. I was sure there was something wrong with this. So the fact that you actually were here and lived here in order to get this done, I couldn't be more appreciative. So thank you all.
Commissioner Pandimo?
I just had a comment, and I am also very appreciative for the work that you've done. The one thing I would like to add, if you would please add, you talked about other urban communities like Oakland that you looked at. Could you, when you do your document, could you list, because it would be very interesting to see what you've done in looking at other communities, and add that to it at some point. Okay.
Thank you. And since I have to present this publicly 4 times, I wanted to leave a little suspense for the first policy.
Ooh, the teaser.
No, but there'll be a full list of all the general orders that we consulted with, so I appreciate that.
You kind of knew I was going to ask you that, right?
Thank you. Good evening, Chief Ham. Good evening. And John. Question, what other state laws are governing, besides the one that you just referenced? I believe it's in slide 10. Right. So are there other state laws that are governing general orders in the way that we draft policy? Or is this the only one?
That's the only one I know of. Yeah. I mean, we do have the Law Enforcement Officer Bill of Rights, but that kind of deals with discipline in terms of police officers in the state of Maryland and how that's done. But other than that, I'm not aware of any other laws that govern.
Now, is this law specifically dealing with officers carrying guns? So outside of that, jurisdictions have the ability to create policy outside of anything other than this?
Right. Other than the Maryland Police and Correctional Training Commission, that's the governing body for all police departments. They do have certain policies and rules that all police officers in the state of Maryland have to follow in terms of policy on recruitment, hiring, things of that nature. That's the only other governing body that I'm aware of that governs this.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, if I could add, in terms of educational law, the only other reference is the role of the Maryland Center for School Safety that was contained in an education article, not a public safety article. So that spells out our role in relationship to local school districts, school systems, what the support that we have. So I think it's very interesting that it too is in the education article as opposed to the criminal law.
Thank you.
Just like to quickly recognize that Councilman Stokes has joined us. Thank you very much, sir. And Commissioner Canham, you had a question.
Yeah, just building on Commissioner McFadden's comment, I think it's really clear during this process, it's overwhelming for everyone to not only, but also the public to understand the general orders, the policy, the law. And one thing that I've been part of this process since the beginning, one thing that has come out, we've got to be crystal clear with the community, when can officers carry a gun in schools? What is law? What is our policy around that, and just be super clear about that. And because that is one of we're governed by state law of what we can do, we've got to be clear on that and clear where we have flexibility or not. And I just think we've got to call that out and be really clear. For the public. The other is, I am really interested on the report card and what we talked about, but then also the report that's going to be done, the annual report, and how we're fine-tuning and tweaking that. What categories? How are we tracking that? In the early meetings, there's a real desire to make sure that we get that right, and that we've consulted. I know we've consulted a lot of groups. I haven't seen the final product of like, what are the categories? What are we tracking? What is that report going to look like? And then I didn't know we were doing a report card as well, a revised report card. So really want to understand that as well. The second thing is on our mind too. It's great to know, like in the rapid response that you shared, Chief Ham, for officer training. But I think it's on everyone's mind too. What is the trainings that officers will do alongside administrators and staff? And I don't know whether that comes in the general orders or not. But is there some kind of statement that could say it's going to be done alongside schools, administrators, and staff? Because I know that's on the mind of everybody. So those are my three general comments.
Any other questions, board members? Okay. Thank you very much. With that, we're going to move to public comment. And just a couple of notes about public comment. Understanding that we are here to hear you, but this is a very polarizing issue. But the bottom line is whether you believe we need more police officers in schools or less or none, we all have a fundamental belief in the safety of our children. And so coming from that point of mutual respect in understanding the outcome, we're going to stick to a very, very hard stop at 3 minutes so that we can get all the voices that would like to speak. If at the end of your 3-minute time, you're not finished with your thought, what I invite you to do is see Joe. He was the handsome gentleman in the middle here, whom I was going to say earlier, if he ever decides to leave us, I am most certain when he gets that question at his interview, when did you encounter a very challenging time that took a great deal of experience and how did you overcome? He's going to talk about this experience. So if you find him, he will add you to the sign-up list, and then we can just keep going through. So if you don't get everything out you need in your 3 minutes, you have an opportunity to come back and join us again. As I said before, also, the board will not be responding. We're just going to be listening and taking notes on your ideas and your needs and your wants. With that said, Tammy, do you have something for us?
Good evening, Commissioners and Dr. Santelises. I just wanted to clarify one of the representations that was made. So in addition to the Education Article, Section 4.318, there are various other federal and state laws that inform the development of our GEOs. So it's not just limited to that one particular law.
Thank you.
Okay.
And is there, I'm sorry, is there a place that we can access them?
So
Or
that,
is it just a plethora of them that?
it would be. So you would look at everything from the criminal law code to case law out of the Supreme Court, the Fourth Circuit, the circuit courts in Baltimore City, search and seizure laws, drug laws, assault laws. So it's such a wide range of laws and regulations that you'd have to look at. I think it would be pretty voluminous were we to provide you with that. But ordinarily, most of the regulations and the board policies will have at least a list of some of the laws and regulations that we looked at in informing how we develop some of the language that we put to you for consideration.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay.
Without any further ado, Siku Kasimo, would you like to join us? And I should just say really briefly, we have a 2-hour time schedule here, just so you know, that's what we're working within. That's why we'll circle back if you'd like. We did.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Madam CEO, and Commissioners. The mass murder at the school in Florida was not a surprise to me, and is further proof that Baltimore City School Police should be armed at all times with their weapons. There's been another shooting since then. A 12-year-old middle school student out in Ohio shot himself. They haven't determined whether or not it was accidental or attempted suicide. I heard your interview on the radio this morning. You made a reference to other jurisdictions having resource officers. What was your point? That because officers are directly under the authority of that district's police department, they are more professional and better trained than Baltimore City School Police? At the school in Florida, the student body was like 3,000 strong. That was a sprawling campus. They had 10 buildings to cover and 1 resource officer. I would like some answers to this question from all of you. Baltimore City School Police are better trained than resource officers and street cops. Street cops and resource officers don't get training in how to deal with poor inner city students, and that's a must. The vast majority of the students in this city school system are African, and they are poor, poverty-stricken, angry about poverty and material deprivation. Our school police force, they live in the city. They have children and grandchildren who attend Baltimore City Public Schools. The most you can do is create a safe environment. And I am amazed that we are still having this conversation after what just happened in Florida. At the next school board meeting, I'm going to call for a roll call vote. Each and every one of you, be prepared to vote and take a stand on this issue. Time is of the essence, and in the event that the work should come to pass, you can't plead ignorance. And there will be a lot of lawsuits dealing with negligence because it's predictable.
Thank you very much, sir. Tony Grace? I'm sorry, maybe it's Tori. No, it's Tony. Okay.
Make sure y'all.
So you push the little button until the light turns green, then let it go. And put it right close to you. You could introduce yourselves as well.
Hi, everybody doing? I'm Tony Grace, and we're a part of Youth is Resources.
I'm Tori Grace.
I'm Dante.
Youth is Resources is a youth-led, grant-making, nonprofit organization. We give grants to young people in Baltimore City, ages 14 to 24. Our board is comprised of about 22 youth and 2 adults, and we give grants to youth in Baltimore City to address critical community problems. And each year, our board adopts issues to work on, and one of our issues this year is school police accountability.
Okay. School police lend themselves more to school to prison pipeline than improvement in schools. And schools, like the school system is their natural environment.
Well, based on our work, which included researching and organizing most of the like the police report card and training school police and facilitating, we've came up with such things: a commitment to administer the school police report card once per school year and share results with youth. The first report card was administered in March 2017. A section for students to report incidents of the use of force by police officers and added to the report card. Any student-police interaction resulting in force, complaint, or disciplinary action should involve an incident report that is shared with the student for comment. Student comments to be included before any report is official. A clear policy around use of force, what school police can and cannot do. School police receive mandatory youth-led and informed trainings on topics to include youth development, best practices, disability awareness, and impact bias. Clear and consistent consequences for officers who do not follow what is outlined in the policies. So these are just some of the policies we've come up with over the time that we've been working on the report card, and think that we should get changed. So,
Over the past like 2.5 years that we've been working on getting the report card implemented, we've gained the support of a few organizations. I'm just going to list a few. New Generation and Next Generation art ensembles of Moonworks Productions, Do More Baltimore, the Youth Resiliency Institute, McElderly Park Youth Council, the Native Visionary Crew of the Baltimore American Indian Center, Recast West Baltimore Community Coalition, known as B-City, Do More Baltimore, said that already, Be More Awesome, and African Diaspora Alliance. That's just a few of our supporters.
We were pleased to see some of the recommendations in our draft that
I'm going to pause for just a second here.
Yes.
Because Tony, Tori, and Dante all signed up separately, if we could start the clock for 3 more minutes for them. Thank you.
Okay. Some of the key points were left out, and that's where I had this one.
thank you for your time, and we appreciate us y'all having us here today.
Thank you very much. Next up is Donovan Brooks.
Good evening
Evening.
to the commissioners and Madam CEO. It's my assistant. I just want to speak real briefly this evening. I like the things that I heard coming from the commissioners in terms of the support that school police has given to the process of looking into the agency. So briefly, I served 20 years as a Baltimore City school police officer from 1997 until about 90 days ago when I retired. I also have 2 children who still attend Baltimore City Public Schools. And what I heard was very impressive in terms of how school police have given of themselves, how they've opened up and been willing to work with all of the various organizations. And one of the commissioners, the gentleman that was here earlier at the table said that a lot has been asked of school police. And clearly, school police rose to the occasion each time that things were asked of them. So what I would ask the Board of Commissioners and the CEO is, what is it that the school police can now ask for? Because we've already said a lot has been asked of them, and they've delivered on things that have been asked. And I know, during the 20 years that I served, that after 9/11, we carried our weapons. We carried our weapons right after the incident happened during 9/11, and we carried them for 15 years until the issue came up with a small gap that needed to be closed in the law. When that issue came up, all of a sudden, school police became everything except protectors and a lot of the narratives that we had to listen to. While I was still a school police sergeant and supervisor, I sat in board meetings and I listened to students who were given statements that were just absolutely inaccurate, that were delivered to the public about school police officers. So again, I'm happy the school police has delivered each and every time that they've been asked, and I ask that now we as a community support school police, close the gap, give them all of the tools that they need to execute their duties and responsibilities, and carry out the oath that they've taken to protect persons and property. And in my current job as the Chief of Safety, Security, and School Policing for the Hartford County Public School System, I support those very things for the system that I now am the chief of. And I ask that you support the Chief of School Police and the officers so that they can have the proper tools each and every day that they show up to work to carry out their duties as sworn law enforcement officers. One of the few occupations where you take an oath to place yourself between the threat of imminent danger and death. Thank you for my time.
Thank you, and thank you, Chief Brooks, for your service. Up next is C. Duncan Evans. Mr. and Ms. Evans? It says, it looks like C. Duncan to me.
She was just in a meeting with us upstairs. It's possible
Okay,
that she's delayed, so we might try calling back to her later.
At the end. Rashad Hawkins?
I just realized, I'm sorry, Disability Rights Maryland, in conjunction with Wide Angle Youth Media, provided cards for Know Your Rights for our students, and they're available in the lobby. So they're printed to give students a very easy, accessible way for them to know their rights in dealing with school police. So that just goes to our transparency and our work with our advocates. And I personally told her I wouldn't announce this, so I apologize for interrupting your time. Thank you.
Hello, thank you, Madam CEO, Madam Chair, and members of the committee. My name is Rashad Hawkins. I'm the founder of Be More Awesome, Inc. We're also a member of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. Be More Awesome utilizes intersecting arts, activism, and entrepreneurship training in science, technology, engineering, art, and math projects to empower youth most directly impacted by systemic issues of inequity. Increasing levels of income and wealth inequity in the United States are directly contributing to racial and ethnic gaps in educational outcomes. In 2012, for every one non-Hispanic white American living in poverty, 3 African Americans and Hispanics were below the poverty line. Students' socio-demographic qualities are related to harsh school discipline. Poor students are more likely to be targeted by harsh school practices, while wealthier students more often receive mild to moderate consequences. So it's no surprise that minority students receive harsher treatment more often than white students and are generally given punishment that are more frequent and more punitive for less serious offenses. Minority students are also less likely to receive mild disciplinary alternatives. In the past several years, news reports revealed that several Baltimore school police officers have pled guilty to assaulting students, and that almost half of students surveyed by school administrators believe that school police use excessive force to resolve conflict. If police are going to be assigned to city schools, then school officials must ensure that school police are not involved in routine school discipline matters and require school police to comply with certain training, data collection, and reporting policies and practices. Any policy should include a clear description of student misbehavior that warrants school disciplinary processes. Parents or guardians should be notified immediately after an arrest, and if any officer wants to interview and question their child. Any policy must discourage arrests and also use of restraints and pepper spray. Every officer should receive pre-service training and annual training on de-escalation tactics. This includes child and adolescent development and psychology, children with special needs, and culture and gender competency. Any policy should describe in detail how positive methods will be used as alternatives to involvement in the juvenile justice system. We must work smarter and use data-driven solutions to ensure that our schools are safe and our youth are given the best opportunities to develop and succeed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next guest is Randy Kess. As Randy's making his way, I'll just give a quick reminder. We have a hard stop at 7:30, but if you did not were unable to sign up or would like to sign up for a second 3-minute time slot, Joe has gone to the back room, so you need to step out in the hallway and sign in with him.
But he won't be able to see, like, he's in the back room, so, I mean, I wonder if there's somebody else who could do that, because I mean, you'd have to knock on the door. He's running the control room,
Right.
so he's not, like, he won't necessarily see who's there. So if somebody.
If they go out in the hallway, the door's open, and he was prepared for that. But if there's someone else that wants to do it, that's perfectly fine with me.
Sabrina Sutton has volunteered.
Okay,
to do it.
perfect. Sabrina, would you stand up
Thank
and
you,
wave?
Sabrina.
Mostly because you're beautiful, but secondly, so they can find you. Okay, so if you would like to sign up for an additional 3 minutes or a 3-minute time that's cut off at 7:30, see Ms. Sutton. All right, thank you, Mr. Kess.
Good evening, Chair, lectures, board members, and Madam CEO. My name is Randy Kess. I'm a parent of 3 Baltimore City Public School students. Now, last week, on the 14th, was one of the hardest days as me for a parent to have a sit-down with my children and discuss the events that happened in Parkland, Florida. Now, a question was brought up to me by my 15-year-old poly student and said to me, Dad, what am I supposed to do in that situation? And I sat there and I thought for a moment, and I really did not have an answer for him, because there's no policy in place for active shooter training for these children. Now, we have fire drills, right? But we do not have any type of training or drills along with anything involving active shooters. Now, my son brought up the issue about him being in the cafeteria of Poly High School. If anyone knows anything about Poly High School, they're connected to Western. Now, he said, Dad, I can run out the back of the cafeteria, but I'm stuck. I asked him, what do you mean that you're stuck? Well, he said, I'm stuck because I'm surrounded by a building that I cannot get in, and there's a gate that is on the other side near the gym will leave me stuck inside of the area. Not only that, his school has an unarmed police officer there, which he knows by OT, which he respects, he has a rapport with, and a relationship with. OT is an unarmed police officer who is unable to retrieve his weapon in the event of something of that nature was to happen at that school. He would have to have the ability to hunker down and hide, or try as many different ways to save lives without being able to defend my child. So my question to this board, I see that the things that school police are doing, they're doing excellent things and to build a relationship with children, because my 8-year-old can name 5 of them that she has a rapport with. My question is to you guys, are you going to defend my child? Are you going to do the right thing and arm these officers in the event that something does occur? We should not be proactive. We should not be reactive in this matter. We should be proactive. And arming these police officers is a must. Now, school shootings are not becoming an uncommon thing. They're now becoming common. And we need to be ahead of the time. That is my time. I would like to say thank you.
Thank you very much. We'd like to invite Melissa Schobert.
Good evening. I plead guilty. I'm the advocate who emailed Senator Ferguson in May 2017 when I saw the RFP go up, because it seems silly to have a procurement for something we were already paying for as a state. So speaking of money, although many improvements have been made to the general orders, school police were still funded last year, FY18, at $6.8 million. That's 40% of what we get for the city to improve and maintain all 160 buildings. So where should that money go? I'd prefer to have heat for my 9-year-old daughter so she doesn't have to wear a coat in class, but that's just me. The $6.8 million represents the 2.17, 2.34, and $1 million that the academic office spends on STEM, literacy, and early learning combined. So again, if this is a school agency, we should be putting those dollars to school functions. I too am concerned about safety, but both Parkland and Columbine had armed officers, and I do not wish to relitigate the 2015 debate over the bill that failed, although welcome Commissioner McFadden. That was a long, difficult fight, and I'm happy to share with you all the PIA documents that I had to request from this body because no one would respond to me. And finally, tonight, although we've revised these orders, I have heard zero discussion of how this relates to the DOJ consent decree in which school police were named. School police were described as an auxiliary force to the city police without clear use of force guidelines, without clear complaint procedures, and protected by the Law Enforcement Officers' Bill of Rights, which was formally described as something about discipline that guarantees officers additional rights above citizens to respond to complaints and protects their personnel records from public inspection. Indeed, that education article is not the only state law. Personnel records for school police are protected under MPIA. So parents, civilians, and students cannot see those personnel records. So when school police are accused or have sustained complaints, there is no way for parents, students, or the community to know that those officers have sustained complaints under state law. I have no idea who is in the building with my child, although we license teachers and other members of the community. That is an unfair disparity and leaves us wondering about the ability of those officers to maintain safety in the building, especially in light of the fact that several pled guilty to crimes against students. I urge you again to consider where you're spending your dollars and if $6.8 million shouldn't be spent on heating and air conditioning for the 160 school buildings in this city or on school police. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll invite Christine Duncan Evans to join us. Are you yielding it to a specific human or just in general?
Just
We got- Okay, perfect. Then Nicole Chang.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for the time. In an era where tensions between police officers and the public are perilously high, our schools have become a breeding ground for bilateral contempt between activists and the communities they're meant to serve. This pattern threatens the safety of students and officers alike. Perhaps even more problematic, it undermines what truly should be an opportunity for both sides to build trust, establish solidarity, and strengthen communities. There are 103 full-time officers in 37 schools, all whom underwent mandatory training over the summer that delved into ways to reduce student arrests, attempt conflict resolution, and be cognizant of implicit bias and other best practices. In the past 4 years, Baltimore School Police have recovered 915 weapons on school grounds, including 12 firearms. On Tuesday, December 5th, 2017, school police were doused with bleach while breaking up a fight at Achievement Academy. When a student threw bleach in the officer's eyes, it was splattered into the eyes of a hall monitor and onto the clothes of another student. Earlier during the same school year, a student tried to enter the same school with a loaded gun. A school police officer recovered the weapon, which was not used to threaten anyone. Let's all agree that everyone cannot police schools. That's why this job is unique. Schools must be safe havens. They must be filled with love and compassion. Youth as Resources is the Baltimore-led organization that you heard from. Young folks tackle community problems through organizing and leadership. They developed a survey which was administered last March to 36 schools where police officers were stationed. It marked the first time students were surveyed about their actual interactions with our officers. Of the more than 5,400 5th through 12th grade students that participated in the survey, 85% said the school police are respectful to students. More than 70% said school police contribute positively to school climate and make them feel safe. Though the survey also found that more than half the city students felt like school police does not have an understanding of their life in outside school. It has been my experience that most of the school police officers have strong ties to Baltimore and can identify with students. Unlike many of Baltimore City police officers, our school police are from these communities, raised in these communities, and still live in these communities. Our officers do their best to improve understanding between students and officers by placing officers in the schools and community at large, where they ensure school safety while serving as officers, mentors, mediators, informal counselors, and often student allies. Our officers not only enforce laws in our schools, but many times they find themselves acting as problem solvers and liaisons for both students and staff. Further local crime prevention efforts in teaching students how to avoid becoming crime victims. In the majority of cases around the country, that's what resource officers are doing every day. Baltimore City School Police is no different. GEMS, a mentoring group that works with young ladies about poise, etiquette, charm, grace, morals, and their behavior, was created by our very own Officer Betty Covington of Digital High School.
Thank you, Ms. Chang. We appreciate
you.
your time. Nicole Dooley, would you join us, please?
Hi. Good evening, Dr. James Hassan, Dr. Santelises, and board members. My name is Nicole Dooley, and I'm an attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund. We are the nation's oldest law organization, founded almost 80 years ago by Baltimore native Thurgood Marshall. We have fought for equitable educational opportunities for African American students and other students of color, and I very much appreciate the opportunity to give public comment today. Our vision is for students to attend schools with assigned police officers who have defined roles, because we are concerned that far too many students, particularly students of color, are arrested for typical behaviors that could be addressed by school staff. We offer suggestions on how to limit the role of police in school discipline in our written comments that I'd like to submit for the record. We also echo the concerns raised by a previous speaker that school police also patrol city streets in partnership with the Baltimore Police Department. We recommend that the relationship be reconsidered during this process. At a later date, after we've had an opportunity to take a more detailed look at the draft policy, along with the regulation and the general orders, we would like to submit additional feedback and suggestions. We appreciate all of the work that has been put into the policy development so far, and we look forward to learning how the policy, the regulation, and the general orders will work together and how they will serve as clear guiding documents for school police officers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Shamarla McCoy.
I am not Shamarla McCoy. Thank you for having me. I'm Kim Humphrey. I'm the Legislative Counsel with the ACLU and a member of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. I am here to provide a little bit of background about CRSD's relationship with the school police policy. Over the last 4 years, we have worked with members of the board, members of the school police force, and members of the community to make sure that the school police policy was actually responsive in helping school staff, and school police, as well as students and families, understand the role of school police. So Shamarla has our full comments, but we just wanted to thank you for the work that has been done thus far. Back in 2015, we asked for better data collection, we asked for better training, and policy, and that's where we are now. So we did move forward with better data. I just wanted to let the public know about that history, and I'll turn it over to Shamarla.
Thank you. My name is Shamarla McCoy. I am the Education Policy Director at Advocates for Children and Youth, as well as I'm the chair of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline. And I just wanted to also thank you guys for having this forum. We've been working closely with your policy committee and Chief Ham and Joe Strake, and we really want to echo the appreciation that we're here right now. So good evening. I'm going to present comments on behalf of the Coalition to Reform School Discipline, which brings together advocates, service providers, and concerned citizens interested in transforming school discipline practices within Maryland's public school systems. Members of our coalition include the ACLU of Maryland, Disability Rights Maryland, Advocates for Children and Youth, Family League of Maryland, NARAL Pro-Choice Maryland, Office of the Public Defender, Open Society Institute, Be More Awesome, Parents Place of Maryland, Project Hill at Kennedy Krieger, Public Justice Center, Children in Courts, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, and I apologize if I forgot anyone. Our mission is to ensure that the discipline of young people in schools is fair, equitable, and supportive of positive school environments for both students and school staff. So I want to provide a little bit of context and say that the Baltimore City Public Schools is just one of a very few handful of school districts in the country that has its own school police force. And as a result, we do spend millions of dollars of the BCPS budget on policing students. Youth in Baltimore are more likely to be arrested at school than youth in other parts of the state.
Ms. McCoy?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm done.
I appreciate it. Yeah, you got to talk with Kim about that one. But you're welcome to. We put the sign-up sheet back with Ms. Sutton if you'd like another 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right.
Well, when we have been working with Joe Strike, this forum was supposed to be more open, where we had unlimited time. That's what I was told.
Oh, no, we have 3 minutes.
It's a 3
And
minute.
in order to be respectful of everyone and make sure
Okay.
that everyone's voice gets heard, and we don't privilege one perspective over another, we're going to do a hard stop on 3. But there is more room, and we should be able to get back to you before 7.
Okay. All right. Okay. I'll do
So
that.
the other,
Go ahead.
can we get 3 minutes, because the other group that was up here, they each got the 3 minutes?
They did not.
Okay.
They would have had 9 minutes, and they each have signed up for a different 3-minute slot. So, thank you. Appreciate your
you.
support. Jacques Thompson?
Hello. My name is Jacques Thompson. I go to Bard High School Early College, and I just want to first start off by saying that my views are my own, and I do not represent my school. But in this discussion about school policing, I wanted to bring attention to my situation in my school. Bard is sharing a building with Connections, and is very close to Independence. And among those 3 schools, I am not even sure if there are 1 or 2 police officers, right? And it does not fill me with a sense of protection to know that there is no trained officials to come in and assist with anything that happens. I'm also on SGA, right? So a lot of times I am concerned with the safety of our students. I'm concerned with how our student body is doing. I'm concerned with all those different factors. And I really wonder, after what happened in Florida, if we will be protected or if we will be safe from that sort of thing. We put a lot on our teachers. You know, teachers are not only are they are teachers, but they're also kind of parents, and in some way they're kind of one to discipline as well, right? But asking them to also be the ones to mitigate disasters such as what happened in Florida is a bit much for me. And I do believe that there needs to be a change in terms of what's going on with these school policing, so that we can be safe in any school, right? And that's what really concerns me. I just want to give my piece there. But thank you.
Appreciate that, thank you. And because it was on 2 separate sheets of paper, I didn't have it, but Ms. McCoy and Ms. Humphrey, would you like to join us again? Yes, apologize for that, it was on 2 separate sheets of paper, just trying to keep everything equitable as possible.
I appreciate it. All right, so, well, I'm wearing 2 hats. I also have written testimony that I'd like to submit on behalf of Advocates for Children and Youth. So, I will just continue where I left off. So, in 2015, 12.6% of juvenile arrests in Baltimore were school-based. This means that in Baltimore, approximately 1 out of every 128 students face arrest at school. In contrast, in New York City, only 1 out of every 392 students face arrest. Moreover, data collected by OPD reveals that out of the school-based arrests that occur, only about 17% are ultimately adjudicated delinquent. This means that in most cases, youth become involved with law enforcement at school in situations where the facts are not sustained in court and the complaints against them are dismissed or later diverted, suggesting that the incident could have been addressed without involving the juvenile justice system. With these facts in mind, we feel it is essential that a school police policy clearly defines and limits the role of police in city schools. As currently drafted, this policy is not robust or substantive enough to provide meaningful protection of our students. An effective school policy must include a clear definition of the role of school police, due process protections for youth, and accountability for police actions. Clearly defining the role of police will allow a good policy that will limit the involvement of police officers in schools to incidents in which they are absolutely necessary through a clearly defined standard. There should be a detailed description of student misbehavior that warrants the school disciplinary processes, and then more serious offenses that warrant the involvement of law enforcement and later arrest. The policy should outline a series of steps that should be taken before a student is arrested to prevent unnecessary arrest. I see that I have only 1 minute to remain. So I just want to end with, we would like to continue to encourage the Baltimore City School Police, the board, and members of the community that when police are located in schools, that their role is seamlessly interwoven within positive school climate, that they are implementing restorative practices and providing protection and safety for staff and students, not to arrest, detain, and restrain students, particularly students of color and students with disabilities who are disproportionately impacted by over-policing, illegal and unconstitutional arrests, and overall school push-out. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for understanding and respecting the process. We welcome William, I want to say it's Rogers Ayers, but please correct me on that when you get up here. Is William with us? Oh, perfect, thank you. No, William.
Hello. I pressed the button, right? Okay. So, hello, everyone. My name is William Rogers Owens. I'm student representative for ACE Academy, and I would like to emphasize on a problem that was faced towards me when I left a school family plan team meeting. I did say who I am, and I do respect this board forum on school police policy. I respect the board and CEO and Ham, and I will talk about it briefly. So when I was leaving this meeting, this was probably about a week ago, when I left the school building, and it still shakes me up to talk about it. When I left the building, a person with a gun pointed it at me, and I emailed the CEO and Ham. You probably saw my email, and I'm just quoting off of it, that when that did happen, my only question is, where was school police? Could they have stayed longer? Could there have been more officers patrolling the area afterwards of people leaving the building? I respect school officers. They were doing everything that they could, probably at the time, but they weren't anywhere to be found. I then later called 911 for assistance. They assisted me, and they took me home. It was a sad moment for not only for a kid who goes to Baltimore City Public Schools to leave safely from a school building, but it's really hard to say what kind of culture do we try to enforce about school police and policy, and what we try to do to enforce those policies that really help protect the environment, community, staff, administrators, teachers, and we really need to look at that and give school police the power that they do deserve to have to enforce laws that really protect people like me. That person could have shot me. I could have been dead right now. So that's something to be said and something to be reckoned for. I thank him for his response. We talked on the phone. Very good guy. We had a school police committee on school police for students that came out. He's still trying to work on it with the COO and I believe Mrs. Merritt and Mrs. And another woman to get that up and running. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think on behalf of all of us, Mr. Rogers Owens, we're really glad you're here. Too many of your colleagues aren't. Next, we invite Sekou Kasimo to join us again. Thank you.
Good evening again. I know Ms. Trueheart, she gonna be angry she missed this. 2 shots at it. Sometimes I neglect to ask the obvious question. Are you protected by the police? Are you concerned about a mass shooting incident in this building? You should be. And if you care about your own personal safety and protection, you should have that same attitude towards our students. These officers are armed, sworn to protect and serve. And if somebody comes in here with any kind of weapon, I know they're going to stand their ground and they're going to deal with them. I heard a presenter make a disparaging remark, in my opinion, about school police officers who had pled guilty to different charges. Obviously, she has no idea how the so-called criminal justice system works. A lot of people plead guilty to things they are not guilty of because it's tactful. And when you have a public defender as a naysayer, aiding and abetting all these minority groups who are in opposition to us having armed police officers, then you ought to know what's going on. You could figure it out. They're manipulating the system through the courts. Our children need discipline. These police officers are men who know how to raise male children. It takes a man to teach a male how to be a man. And I couldn't help but notice that most of these naysayers are female. Now, I'm going to stay in my lane. I'm not going to try to teach a female child how to be a woman. But at the same time, women need to take a back row seat and let the men teach the males how to be men. I have every confidence in our police force. I swear by them. I get a lot of stares in the street when we had this conversation. Oh, you pro-police? Pro-school police. And there's a difference. And if you were following that trial with the gun trace task force, a whole lot of people were pleading guilty and went to prison for things that we now know they were not guilty of. So because you had 1 or 2 police officers who pled guilty because they didn't want to go through that stressful trial process, couldn't afford private attorneys, because in my community, you know what we call public defenders? Public pretenders.
I invite Clyde Boatright to join us. Thank you.
Good evening, Dr. Hassan, Madam CEO, Dr. Santelises. There's been a lot of debate about the role of school police over the last few years. Actually, this table was turned this way exactly 1,092 days ago when I sat before this body and I said, we need to do something about school police. It was under a different administration. But the policies that are before you today, this is what a school police general orders manual looks like. Our officers are charged with the responsibility of understanding these policies, procedures, and also criminal law, traffic law, and a number of other things. The problem with this, as I hold this general orders manual, multiple people have testified that this process has been about 2 years or more. It's been a long, painstaking process reviewing the general orders manual. I'm going to pause for 1 second and read Webster's definition. Under the definition of labor union, the definition reads, an organization of workers formed for the purpose of advancing its members' interests in respect to wages, benefits, and working conditions. I think this policy is a working condition. And every one of these revised policies, the school police union received on Valentine's Day while we were watching the incidents unfold in Florida. We have never had a seat at the table. And everybody has walked in here and talked about this collaboration and collaboration and collaboration. But how about the men and women that's charged with the responsibility of ensuring safety? Where's their seat at the table? It's a problem. Now, I have a prepared statement. It's 2 pages long. I can get into that. I'm not going to go there. We've debated about the guns in school issue. I've done all kinds of media regarding the guns in school issue. There is no written policy that allows a school police officer in the event of an emergency to go to a safe and retrieve the gun and go defend kids. It does not exist. That is a false sense of security. Now, our officers post every day. We've heard a lot of great things. In fact, we thank Dr. Santelises for now giving our officers awards for recovering guns. But one of the persons that testified said there's been 12 over the last 4 years. And we thank you for acknowledging our officers for that. I know my time's expired, and usually public comment, there's a different section for organizational comment.
Correct.
And everyone else is given 5 minutes. So if I
You're
can
welcome to sign up for
I can
another
sign up
3
again,
minutes, but
I
we
have
don't
more.
At forums, we don't recognize it.
Sure, I understand. I understand. I'll sign up again.
Perfect. Next, we'd invite Ms. Cheng. Nicole?
Thank you. For the last 2 years, school police have provided a safe and nurturing environment for many students during out-of-school time. Police at Baltimore City Schools arrested 91% fewer students this past school year compared to 2008. The drop, which led to just 85 students arrested in 2016 to 2017 school year, comes as the district police have stopped arresting students for low-level crimes. While engaging with Dante, a student from Youth as Resources, students that just spoke about their experience, I found it interesting that when I asked him about his own personal experience with Officer Duncan, who is the officer that's stationed at Patterson High School, he shared that he had a positive relationship with Officer Duncan. It is my personal belief that if you were to ask these students individually, you would hear many of the same comments, that they too have a positive relationship with the officer stationed at their school. There are no national data on what officers do while at schools, but it's my experience that officers are being asked to deal with mental health problems, family crisis, self-injuries behavior, and manifestations of childhood trauma. They also mentor students and teach related courses. Through all of this, our officers have maintained and carried themselves accordingly. I want to just take a couple minutes, and just share with you a letter that one of our parents shared with us. Our officers during out-of-school time for the last 2 years have served as mentors, providing free out-of-school time camps for many of Baltimore City students. This letter is from Michelle Thompson. It says, "To whom it may concern, my daughter is 7 years old, and each year is a struggle to find a camp that will enrich her, nurture her, allow her to have fun, and be within my budget. I am happy to say that our Legacy All-Stars Commissioners Camp exceeded all of my expectations. Due to their partnership with Baltimore City School Police, my daughter and her brother, who is 11, attended this camp and loved it. Her brother is older and is more aware of the tension between the community and police. He was able to see a different side of Baltimore police officers and school police. He enjoyed every minute he spent with them, even if they had to pull him aside due to his behavior. They were able to experience things that neither of them had experienced before, like horseback riding. Both of them are looking forward to returning to the camp and have asked me on several occasions what camp we are going to this year. Please, can we go back to our legacy with Corporal Black, Officer Amos, Officer Bonaparte? Will they be there again? Each of them made new friends with the other campers and the officers. As a parent, I think it's really important that children see officers in a positive light and not just the negative that is on the news. And this camp allowed my children to get to know the police officers and see them in a positive way and not to fear them. I hope this camp will be ongoing for the next several summers, and hopefully it can continue to grow and have a positive impact on many children around this city. As my time is wrapping up, I say all that to say that our officers wear so many hats. Oftentimes you hear the stories of what's gone wrong or what they're not doing, but what they are doing. Personally, because of Chief Ham and his staff, my son, who graduated from Digital High School last year, who now attends Shaw University, was robbed at gunpoint on the MTA bus. Because of Chief Ham and his due diligence and his staff, we were able to identify the young man that attacked my son at gunpoint. Not only were we able to retrieve, we were able to retrieve his phone, but because of the understanding of the officers, we did not press charge. Instead, we seek mediation. Thank you.
Thank you. Shana Hall?
Good evening, everyone. Commissioners, Dr. Santelises. I was not expecting to speak this evening, but I come to you. My name is Shana Hall, principal of the Stadium Middle School in Baltimore City. I sat back and I just listened to some of the comments, and I found them a little disheartening because I want to speak about the positive relationships that I have observed school police have with my students, and even in my experiences as a student in the Baltimore City public school system. In 1992, I was a student at Roland Park, and Officer Kelly was shot by a student who brought a handgun to school as he was trying to take it away from a student in an effort to protect the rest of the students. That alone is a reason why we need school police officers. If that was an issue in 1992, we know for a fact it continues to be an issue now. In 2000, I met Chief Ham. He came to Chinquapin Middle School, did a presentation for the teachers and staff on the gangs in the area that we weren't aware of. And it enlightened us because we were able to take the information he shared and then take that information and share it with our officer as we noticed things with our students writing on their notebooks and different codes and things. I also would like to say in 2008, I was the victim of a vicious attack in a school building on a Saturday as I went in to do some work with some of my colleagues. The first people to respond was school police. Their compassion, actually sitting with me while I was crying. I'll be very honest, it was an attempted rape by a student at the school who broke into the building that day. And the officers who responded at that time was Sergeant Foreman, now Officer Merrick. They were the ones that sat with me during the process when I was trying to get my emotions together, because no one expects to do that, to have that happen to them when they go in to do more work to help improve the school where they were working. But most recently, Stadium hosted the School Police Initiatives Camp. I had a chance to see the officers interact with students from ages 5 to 11, doing activities, singing, dancing, going on trips that they often paid for out of their own pockets. I also can speak to my former school police sergeant who spoke earlier, Randy Kess, who made Stadium his home. He would pay for kids to do things. He went on field trips with them. He also bought a young man some tennis shoes because he didn't have any for Christmas. When I first went to Stadium in 2013, Officer Kenya at Mervo volunteered to serve as a mentor for the girls at the school. She would come over once a week and work with some of our most challenging personalities. I say this because as a principal, and I'm kind of saddened that I don't see more of my colleagues here, I don't think we really knew about the meeting. I stumbled upon it walking down the hallway from budget meeting. I think that you need to hear the voices of the principals that are in these buildings every day, knowing the types of students that come in our buildings, that despite our efforts to educate them, they come with a lot of baggage from home. And some of that baggage contains violent backgrounds where they are surviving the streets and they don't know any other way but to carry weapons or to act out with emotions that are not controlled. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hall, and thank you for your leadership. Ms. McCoy? Yes? Shamala? Do you want another? You good? Okay, you came up again. Mr. Bokra? Mm-hmm. Yes?
Thank you. I needed that 5-minute cool down. This is a labor of love.
There's a method to my madness here.
Yes, I thank you. One of the things I wanted to talk about was a perfect segue by Dr. Hall when she talked about principals. Back in November of 2014, This issue regarding arming school police officers was brought before this body, was voted on, and it was moved towards the legislative agenda. The bill, once it got to the Maryland State delegation and the Baltimore City delegation, just never was called for a vote. I mean, that's the process. I mean, I have a little bit of knowledge outside of being the president of Baltimore City School Police. I am the first vice president of Maryland State Fraternal Order Police, and that encompasses 20,000 police officers throughout the state of Maryland. But let me give a few numbers, because when we had this discussion, like I said, 1,092 days ago, to be exact, 100 out of 128 principals that were polled, and my colleague, Mr. Jimmy Giddings, testified to this. 100 out of 128 principals polled supported school police and schools with guns. 67% of teachers, this was testified to by Ms. Marietta English from BTU, 67% of teachers felt as though school police officers should have been armed in schools. So who are we listening to? Who are we listening to? Are we whispering in the woods? But who are we listening to? School police wants it. Principals want it. Teachers want it. Clearly, some students want it. I want to also bring up this last point as I close. Detective Lawrence Smith, who handles most of our media and things like that, he was just recently selected to go to Washington, D.C. and present on behalf of de-escalation for the national recognized for school-based officers. He's going to be teaching, based on his curriculum and his lesson plan, it was chosen by a national organization for him to teach de-escalation to school-based police officers. We have a bunch of jewels. We talked about we heard from Sergeant Kess, you heard from new director of Harford County Schools, Sergeant Brooks, who's retired. We have a bunch of jewels here, and we have to recognize that. But I will ask this board, and I would challenge you to ask yourself this question. If Parkland, Florida was Baltimore City, would your vote still be the same to not arm your officers? I'll leave you with that thought.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to express gratitude again to Mr. Clark, to Chief Ham, to staff who have been working on this, to Joe, to Chief of Staff Perkins Cones, to Dr. Santelises. And I'd like to also remind us that in education, or anyone working with young people, it's a challenge. And when the media is beating you up, and when you feel the various aspects of the stakeholder groups are beating you up, it's hard to do, but our officers are still showing up every day. So I'd just like to say that we're going to work on this process, we're going to work on this policy, we're going to try and get it right and be an exemplar to the country. And in the meantime, thank you all for your service, for showing up and doing such great work for our kids. Any other comments from Dr. Santelises or commissioners? Right, thank you again for coming out. Again, the next time that we'll see this policy is March 20th at the policy meeting. There is public comment available there as well. Otherwise, we are officially adjourned at 7:05 p.m. Thank you.